Hi, I'm Marius from EVF Photography here in Cape Town, South Africa, and in this video I'm going to talk about the Fuji X-T1. Now, this is my review on this camera and it's a little bit long overdue. I just didn't have time to shoot the video, so finally here is the video on this camera. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the good and the bad, because with every system out there you find stuff that you just don't like. So I'm going to talk about what I do like and what I don't like. I'm going to go into detail on the camera body, show you what the screen looks like, how the buttons work, and I'm not going to talk about the technical specs. So please don't in the comments section ask me about the technical specs. If you want to know the technical specs on the camera, just go to Google, type in Fuji X-T1 technical specs, and you've got an entire list within 1 second that will give you all the specs on the camera. I'm rather going to focus on what you don't see on that technical specs when you actually look at the camera, when you actually use the camera. I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about using flash on this camera, because it's one of the very negative things at this time. They are releasing a flash later this year, but for now I'm going to talk about my experience by using flash on this camera with what we have currently. Okay, so what do I own? Now, I bought two of these Fuji X-T1s. So it's my own cameras I've been working on that I'll be explaining and showing you everything. So I bought two Fuji X-T1s with battery grips and lots of extra batteries. Because of mirrorless systems, because of that electronic viewfinder, this thing chows batteries. So I bought 9 batteries. So I'm sorted. I can go an entire weekend without recharging on this thing. Okay, then on the one body, I've got the kit lens. This is the 18-55, the 2.8 to f4 version. On this one, I've got a lens that I just love. I mean, like really, I'm in love with this lens. This is my 35mm f1.4. So I use this a lot on weddings and portraiture. It's really, I love that lens. I wanted to get the 65, or was it the 56? 65, I always change those numbers around. It's 5, 6, yeah, 56, 65. Anyway, you get the idea. f1.2, beautiful lens, but then yeah, it became a little bit pricey to buy everything in one go. Okay, so I've also got the 55-200. This is the, I think, 3.5 to 4.8 version. Yeah, 3.5 to 4.8. And then also very important, because of that very nice electronic viewfinder in here, if you have lots of stray light coming in from the sides, you're looking to the camera like this, sometimes you can't see so nicely on the inside there, and I usually have my hand around the camera like this to limit any light coming in here, and it just looks beautiful. You can see everything that you will take on your picture immediately in there. It's really nice. Problem is, if you do get light in there, it spoils the effect. So I bought the long eye cup, I think it's called the eye cup, that you just basically just pull it out from the side. You can see if I pull it here, it should come off fairly easily. And then obviously, because I'm shooting a video, it's not going to come loose. But anyway, you get the idea. You just pull that thing off and then you just fit your long eye cup on there, and this really makes a big difference. I still sometimes get some light coming in there, so I have my hand usually over the camera like this, because I'm doing my settings anyway, so having my hand right there while I'm shooting just blocks any light from coming in there. Okay, then I've also got the very, very terrible, and yes, I'm going to have a go at Fuji in this video, the very terrible Fuji EF42 speedlight. I'm going to talk about that and what they've got coming soon, and then obviously how I've been coping with flash on the X-T1 system, because that thing is so terrible. Now, before we look at the Fuji X-T1 in lots of detail, I first want to give Fuji a big thumbs up, and a big compliment is that they listen. Now, when I say they listen, they're not just a company up there, big company building lots of cameras, shipping it down to us little people. We buy it, and if there's problems, I don't care. They just release a new camera 6 months or a year later, and then there you go again, spend more money. They actually listen. So Fuji, awesome. Okay, so what happens when they listen? Now, I bought a 35mm f1.4 lens. I love this lens. Portraits outside, shooting at 1.4 wide open, beautiful. Problem is your shutter speed. Now, when I got the camera, if you look at the shutter speed dial on top of the camera, the fastest is 0.004 of a second, and that's a bit of a problem. Now, that's your mechanical shutter. You've also got an electronic shutter, so then you don't hear the shtick, you just hear tick, tick, tick as it goes faster. Now, the problem is the camera couldn't go faster. It was stuck at that slow shutter speed. So then they released a firmware update, and the moment I installed it, immediately, boom, my camera can now go to 32,000ths of a second. Now, what's nice about that is I can shoot bright sunlight outside at 1.4, no problems. The feature wasn't there. They released the firmware, now I can do it. They've improved on their focusing. They've done lots of new features that brought into the camera, and I could open up the camera by just installing that firmware. Now usually if I get a new firmware, I usually wait a few weeks until I see everyone says, okay, no problems here, and I'll run it on the camera, because if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Okay, so usually I'll wait, but so far all the updates they've made, awesome. Okay, so Fuji listens. Now I need to, after giving them a very good compliment, I need to nail them a little bit as well. Now this is actually take 2 of this section of my review video, because I had to cut the previous one because I was a little bit red in the face, and then I was at the point of putting in some swear words in there, because that's how angry I am at Fuji for this part. Okay, so this is me putting on a fake smile and then shooting it again and not getting so mad. Okay, so Fuji, you released the EF42, which isn't even a proper Fujifilm thing. It's a rebranded Sunpack flash. Now this thing is terrible. Okay, so I bought 2 of them. I'm going to tell you why they're so terrible. If they didn't cost me money, I would have actually thrown them against the wall and broke them, because that's how terrible they are. So what happens with this flash? You put it on top of your camera and you're shooting in TTL, and then 20, 30 photos, 40, 50 photos later, you feel, whoa, this thing is like it's burning up. Okay, so it overheats terribly. Now, if you look at the screen grab, you'll see that it says after 10 shots, turn the flash off and then wait for 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna take my professional camera, which I'm shooting a wedding on, and I'm gonna tell the wedding clients that are on a schedule that they must wait now for 10 minutes while my flash is cooling down. Like, really? Okay, so why I'm so angry is that the camera's been out for a while now, and there's so many people building flashes out there. Could Fuji not partner with someone and say, please make us an awesome flash, because we're working on the Fuji, making it the most awesome camera ever, so make us a cool flash while we're working on our own flash. So I'm actually very easy on Fuji now, because they just released the flash they're gonna basically announce, or they've announced the flash, they must just put it out there. It's called the EVF X-500. Okay, so I'm very anticipated to get my hands on that flash, because I love flash. I love ambient light, I love flash. I love to combine those two and create something totally awesome. So later on in this video, I'm going to talk about what I use, the flashes and everything, to shoot with my Fuji, but still get amazing light on the camera without actually using any Fujifilm products. So you don't want to miss that part of my review. Okay, so now, yeah, this flash is terrible. I basically use these 2 flashes just as here's a flash, I'm taking 2 or 3 shots and then put it back in my bag. I'll never shoot a job with those flashes. They are terrible. Okay, so what I wanted to do, and that's also actually why I'm also so very ticked off at Fuji, is I've got tons of proper flashes like the SB910, the SB800. Now these are the Fuji the Nikon speed lights. SB910, 800, 600. I've got tons of flashes that if I could use it in manual, then I'll still be happy, because then I can adjust the power on here. I don't have an issue with TTL. I don't need TTL. I can set my power levels on here and still shoot the photos I want, bounce the light around and get what I want from the flash, but the camera must just send the signal through and just fire it. That's all the camera needs to do. Put the flash on the camera, the SB910, and the flash fires when it wants to fire. So you take the shots and it only fires every now and then. And if you put it in manual, it doesn't fire what your manual power is. So if I make it half power, it doesn't fire at half power. It just fires a flash, but it doesn't. If it was TTL, I could understand, but it's manual. Okay, so I tried to use this. I tried a Canon speed light. I don't even have any Canon gear anymore. So I tried to put a Canon speed light on there and I couldn't get it off the camera. So it went on so tightly that I actually scraped the top part of the hot shoe. The black paint that's on there is a little bit scraped off it to get the Canon speed light off there. So I was desperately looking for a flash I could use on the camera, and that's why I'm so mad at Fuji. Like, really, you can't put an awesome camera out there and don't accessorize with a proper speed light. So I'm just glad that I've actually announced it now. So I'm really excited to test that flash out the moment it gets released, because I think that's going to make the camera. For me, the flash is one of the biggest disappointments so far on the Fuji system. So yes, I had to get that off the chest, and I'm glad that that this segment of the video I can use for my review. I don't need to shoot it again because I didn't get as angry anymore. The previous one, there was flames behind me and my ears went all pointy, and yeah, it didn't look good. Okay, build quality on the X-T1, I must say the camera is really well made. If I could actually say something negative before I actually start to talk about the good things, is I just don't like this strap. It's very thin. So if you have it on your neck like this, because there is some weight with the battery grip and everything on there, you can obviously take the battery grip off if you like to, but then the camera is a little bit tiny. So if you want to go somewhere where you don't want people to look at you seriously and you want to take some pictures, then you can use it like this. But just look at my fingers are going at the bottom because I'm having a hard time holding the camera because my hands are pretty large. So by holding it like this and for a few hours, this really starts to hurt your neck. So what I've done is I had made 2 of these leather straps. I actually haven't even used them yet. I've had them for a few months now, and you can see there it says EVF Photography on the straps. That look very awesome, and they work very nice as well. They're still a little bit hard, but from usage obviously the leather will become softer and so on. So it's genuine leather straps. The reason I haven't put it on top of the camera is I do have different types of straps. I, for instance, use the, like if I'm only shooting one camera, and at that time I use like the black rapid strap like this. So sometimes I want to use that, and other times I want a strap like this. It really depends. So what I want to do, I just haven't had the time to do it yet, and the reason for that is that I couldn't find something that actually works properly for the strap. So what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to put it like almost like a clip thing that locks into place here. So I want one section here and the other section on here. So then I can say, all right, I've got 2 straps. It's on 2 Fuji cameras. If I want to use the Nikons that day, I put it on my Nikon cameras. So I want the strap to be used for multiple systems and so on. That's the only reason why I've still got the Fuji straps on there. The moment I get that sorted, off goes these, because they're very thin and they hurt your neck. But other than that, the camera build quality is awesome. You can feel it strong. When it's in your hand, you can feel the buttons, everything. It's well made. So build quality on the camera I really enjoy. I love the way they put the buttons, everything at the top. I don't need to struggle to find stuff. If I'm shooting, I can basically be like this and I can know exactly where all the buttons are. It's very user friendly. So build quality is awesome. Now next we are going to take a closer look at the camera to see what all the buttons are, how they work, and then yeah, that's the fun part. So let's have a look at the camera. When we look at the top side of the X-T1, you'll notice the camera has got a very retro look and feel with lots of dials. And you might notice that you don't see the dial that you need to change the mode you want to work in. For instance, program or shutter priority or aperture priority or even manual. The camera doesn't have that. Now I'm going to show you how it works, and once you understand the way this camera operates, it actually works very easily. And I actually prefer working this way than having that mode dial on the camera. Now the first dial we've got right here is the ISO one. Now there's a security button in the middle that you need to press, otherwise you won't be able to change the ISO setting. So it locks it in place, which is awesome, so you don't accidentally change it. Now the higher ISO levels, if you shoot at for instance 1600 or 3200 or even 6400, the camera handles it really well. So I'm very happy with the ISO on this camera. I can shoot images in very low light conditions, especially if I'm using on this camera. I've now got the 35 or 1.4, combine that with a high ISO, I can walk into a very dark room or a very low light situation and get instant shots right there without the need for flashes or anything like that. Okay, so that's the ISO button. Now to change your aperture, you don't need to tell the camera you want to change the aperture. You don't need to set the camera onto an aperture function. You've got your aperture ring right here. Now you'll notice it's a little bit out of focus on the video now, but you can see there 1.4 to 2.8 f4, and it runs all the way here to a setting that's in red and says A. So if I turn this dial to the top, you'll see I've now got it locked into A. Now what that means is that the lens or the camera will now automatically choose the aperture for you. So if I have this in automatic and I take the shutter speed, this is the shutter speed dial right here, and I turn this to automatic as well, Now I've got the camera set to program, because the camera will automatically do the shutter speed, the camera will automatically work out my aperture for me as well. So I'm basically shooting in program mode. If I want to have the camera in, say, aperture priority, then I just take this ring and I can say I want to shoot in maybe f2. Then the camera will always lock in f2, but it'll automatically do the shutter speed for me. So now I'm in aperture priority. Now, say I want to shoot in shutter priority, then I can choose, for instance, maybe I want to shoot at 500ths of a second. Then I'll turn this to automatic. Now I'm in shutter priority because the shutter speed has been locked in and the camera will now do the aperture for me. So now I'm in shutter priority. If I want to be in full manual, then I just choose my shutter speed and I choose my aperture as well. Now I'm in full manual. So you don't need to have that dial, and because all the buttons are so big and easy to basically feel on the camera, while I'm shooting, I don't need to look at the camera. I can see all the settings happen inside here in the electronic viewfinder, but I can easily adjust all these functions on the camera on the go and see it happen inside. So it's very user friendly. Now, something that I don't like is that, for instance, not on all the lenses you've got this aperture ring that you can actually see, like for instance 5.6, f8, f11, f16. Some of the lenses, like for instance the kit lens, the 18-55, it doesn't have those numbers on there. So if you're changing it while just looking at your camera, you can't really see what the settings are. You need to look onto either the screen or you need to look at your electronic viewfinder to know what you're actually changing. So that's a bit of a negative, but yeah, you can still use it, you just can't see the settings on the lens. On this lens you can see it and you can change it here. Okay, so that's the aperture. Here's your shutter. This red button right there, that's for recording video. I haven't discussed video in this. I haven't really used the video function on the camera. I think I used it once or twice. I didn't really bother. I'm used to shooting video on my Nikon SLR, so I'm basically sticking to that. But the video, like I said, you can see the specs on DP Review or the Fujifilm website to see what the specs are. One of the negative things that I quickly saw when I tried to use the video function once was the length of the video clip. It's basically, if I remember correctly, was 15 minutes, where with the Nikon camera I've got about 20 minutes. That gives me an extra 5 minutes to work with if I'm shooting a YouTube video or an interview or something for a client. I'd rather use the Nikon and have that extra 5 minutes than shoot with the Fuji at 15 minutes. So that's why I really haven't used the video function that much. Then you can see a function Wi-Fi button. Now this is great. With the Wi-Fi, I can quickly connect my camera to my cell phone. Now I haven't really used the camera remote. You can also basically set all the settings on your phone and then remote control the camera. I haven't really done that. What I do use, and I use it quite often, is the camera download feature. So I can look at my pictures at the back of my camera screen, and then I just press the OK button at the back and it says sending to phone, sending to phone, sending to phone. So no matter where I am, I quickly connect to my phone, download all the pictures or download to my tablet, and then I've got all the features of social media. I can WhatsApp it to people, I can Facebook it, I can email it, everything on the go right there. I've actually used it on a few weddings where I told the people there's a little surprise happening right after your wedding or sometimes during the wedding. If there's maybe a time where I'm not taking any pictures, maybe might be very long speeches or something, and I quickly take some of the best shots from the day, send it to my phone, and then WhatsApp it right there to them, and their phone buzz, and just see that expression on their face when they open up their phone or when they look at their phone and the pictures start popping up on their screen. So I really enjoy the Wi-Fi feature. Some negative on this as well. I know a lot of cameras, not always the Wi-Fi features work properly. When I got the Fujis, it worked perfectly fine. I'm using an LG G3 cell phone and it connects perfectly fine. But then suddenly both cameras just didn't want to connect. And then finally the one connected again, and then the other one still just doesn't want to connect. Now that can really be 1 out of a million things that could be the problem. It's not necessarily Fuji or the G3 or the Android operating system. It can be anything. So when you're looking at so many phones and you're looking at an Android operating system and you've got the Fuji as well, for something to go wrong, it's really possible that your phone just doesn't want to connect. So you can't really blame it on Fuji. It can be 1 out of a million things, but it is frustrating. So I basically have to take my my card and put it into the camera that can actually connect. So I use one camera to send both cameras' photos to my phone. It's a bit confusing. So, but I know maybe in another month or a few weeks or something, suddenly it will just work again. It's just one of those things. When it comes to software and all that, it just sometimes happens and it works again. Okay, now I'm coming to the button that I fell totally in love with. And that's the exposure compensation button right here. And you can see I can go to +3 and also -3. Okay, so why do I love this button so much? When I'm shooting, and obviously I'm using the electronic viewfinder, inside here I can see bright as daylight on a super bright screen in there, or a very high resolution screen. I can see my picture as I'm taking it. So I can, for instance, say, right, Mr. Camera, I want you in aperture priority. Then I put the camera in A, and for the shutter speed there, and I'll say, right, I want to shoot wide open f1.4. I'm going to take some nice creative shots. So my camera takes care of my shutter speed, and I'm shooting with the aperture that I've now set. This is the way I shoot actually a lot of the times, especially if I'm shooting something for myself, not for a client when I'm working in full manual. But then I'll put the camera in that aperture or whatever aperture I'm using. But then this button starts to become very, very useful. So now as I'm looking at the picture through my electronic viewfinder, and the picture is maybe a little bit too bright, a little bit too dark, I just turn this. If it's too bright, I go darker. If it's too dark, I go brighter. Quickly on this dial, on the go. I think this is the button on the camera that I think will break first in a few years' time, because I really use it that much. So I love this button. This is an awesome button. It's like shooting manual without really being in manual at all. I just quickly, while I'm seeing my picture in here, I just quickly go brighter and darker and snap away. So that's really nice. When you look at the side of the X-T1, you'll notice that it's got a little door right here. When you open it up, inside is your memory card. Now, I would actually love to have 2 memory card slots. When I'm shooting on my Nikon system, I always have, say, 2 32 gig or 2 64 gig cards in the camera, and I will shoot raw backup. So I tell the camera to shoot the same raw file to both cards as a backup. So if I know something goes wrong, I only use the best cards I can get. I don't buy like cheap generic cards or something. I buy proper SanDisks. And I've never had a card die on me, but never say never, especially if it's on a wedding or important shoot that you're doing. You don't want your files to go missing. So I would actually have enjoyed a second card slot so that I can do the same on this system, but yeah, I can't have everything, can I? Okay, so that's this side of the camera. On the other side of the camera, you can open this little door and you will have your USB port here in the bottom. You also have an HDMI port, as well as a port to connect your cable release, as well as your microphone, or an external microphone goes in right here at the top. When we look at the back side of the X-T1, there is quite a lot that can be adjusted very quickly. For instance, you can also take the screen out like this, and then you can tilt it and take pictures up very high or very low. I really enjoy this. On the screen, it has helped me keep my clothes cleaner for a much longer period. Okay, then here at the top, you'll notice below the ISO dial, you've got lots of settings here. For instance, here's your bracketing, a little bit limiting. You can say, okay, a third stop, 2/3, and 1 full stop, say underexposed and underexposed. You can go to your plus and to your minus side. But I would have actually preferred it to go a little bit further, maybe to be able to do 2 stops at least, or 3 stops. So for HDR, that's a little bit limiting. I would appreciate a little bit more range there. Then you've got continuous high and continuous low. That's when you want to shoot continuously, like burst mode. Then you'll set the camera there. Here's single shot. I don't do a lot of sport, so my camera is mostly set to single shot. And then I love this. This is so awesome. That icon right there at the top is the double exposure. Now on my Nikon, when I used to do double exposures, it's a little bit tricky because you take one picture, but then you need to overlay the next picture on top of that, and sometimes you don't align it properly, or the one's exposure needs to be a little bit darker or lighter. With the X-T1, it's just bliss. If you look at the shots on the screen, this was done on first attempt. I didn't take 10 shots to get there. So I take the first picture, and then the first one that you took is displayed with the second shot that you want to take now on top of that. So the camera overlays it for you, and you see it live here in your electronic viewfinder. It's just beautiful. So it's quick. Doing double exposures now is fun. So previously with having an SLR and you can't really see it until you've taken it. It's a bit frustrating. With this, it's really a joy. Okay, then the next one I don't really use. This is I can't remember what the name is. You actually need to go to the menu now to see that. It's the advanced filter effects. So in the advanced filter effects, if I go here, you'll see there's a bunch of them. There's like toy and miniature and pop color and high key and low key and all this. I don't really use this at all. It also only saves you a JPEG. So if you use it, you can't really, I just took a picture of that, but I just want to take that away. It looks ugly anyway. Okay, so it only saves you a JPEG. It doesn't give you a RAW file or something. So if it's an effect I'm trying to apply, I'll rather do it afterwards with a higher resolution file than take the picture the camera takes for me. So for me, that advanced effects is actually just to play around with, but I don't really use it. What I do like is the panorama. So this icon right here is a panorama. You can tell the camera to go horizontal or vertical. And I use this actually quite often. If I'm cycling somewhere and I've got my camera with me, I'm driving out somewhere and I see a beautiful scene, I'll take a shot of it. I'll sometimes take the panned images to create my own panorama on Photoshop. But this is so fast, sometimes I just quickly go and you just snap away. So when you press your shutter release button here at the top of the camera, it sounds like a machine. It goes and it just quickly stitches everything together. Gets it right for me most of the time. Sometimes there's a little bit of a stitching error here and there. But for me, again, this is just for fun. I won't do it and try and sell the picture. I'll rather shoot it properly and stitch it myself. But mostly I keep my camera here on single shot. Right, so on this side, below the shutter speed dial, you've got your metering modes, and then you've got your delete button here if you want to delete your pictures. You've got preview there if you want to preview your picture. Then you've got auto exposure lock, and you've got auto focus lock. Now this one right here that you'd normally use on your Nikon or Canon camera, or Canon usually this button is at the top, for your Nikon if it's there. It'll be your shutter or your aperture button. You can use that to change the shutter as well, because the dial at the top limits you to 4000. So the moment you go to from mechanical shutter to electronic shutter, then you can't really turn this dial at the top anymore. You need something else. You can adjust the shutter. So you can use this one right here, and then you adjust the shutter speed further than 4000. So when I did that upgrade on the firmware, they didn't need to recall the camera to put a new button at the top. They just made it so this button allows you to go faster than the button that they originally put on top of the camera. So that's really awesome. Now, I have already set up this camera for myself. Lots of settings I've changed. I will go through the menu system now to show you what the menu system looks like. It's really user-friendly. You can find everything in there very quickly. But I've changed some of the settings on the camera. I'm going to try and remember what it was usually before, or what it was before I changed it. But I did change a bunch of stuff to make it more user-friendly for myself. Okay, so right here you've got this directional buttons. Now, when you get it the first time, when you want to change your focus points, you would usually press the down button, and when you press that, it will activate your focus points like that. Now, a nice thing with this is, normally with your SLR camera, you can't go all the way to the edge. All your focus points are just chucked in the middle, which is very frustrating. Then you need to focus and recompose. With this, I can take the focus point right till the end, so I can go pretty far, which is awesome. And there's quite more than enough focus points as well, but just look how easily I can set them. Then I can also turn this dial here, and I can change the size of the focus point. So if I'm trying to focus on something and the camera is struggling, I can make it more sensitive or least sensitive, depending on what I'm trying to achieve. And then I just obviously focus, and just look how quickly the camera focuses. Okay, now what I've done is I've disabled these three buttons to make it that I don't need to press the down button here to basically activate the focus points. My focus points are now like my Nikon camera, because that's something I didn't really enjoy with Canon. You had to press a button here at the bottom or here at the top, and that will allow you to change the focus points. It's not a very user-friendly interface. So with the Nikon, I usually had my directional button right here, and I changed the focus points all over the time, because if you don't change your focus points, how can you be a successful storyteller? You need to show people where your focus was. Okay, so what I done was I took away the shortcuts on these 3 buttons. I basically disabled it, and I made it so the camera immediately focuses when I press this. So you'll see immediately when I press to any direction, the focus point automatically activates. The camera's got a lot of functionality when it comes to setting your shortcuts. So there's buttons here on the front of the camera as well. I'm not going to show you now. There's also a selection here in the bottom of the camera where my finger is now that allows you to change your focus from manual focus to continuous to single shot. That's also a button right here. But in the front you've got function buttons where you can allocate as well. Now what I've done is I've taken away, I think it was, if I need to remember now what those buttons were, they were film simulation mode. I'll talk about that soon. And I think the one was white balance. I think it was white balance, film simulation, and this one was the drive mode to change between continuous shooting and single shot and so on. If I remember correctly, it's been quite a few months since I changed it. So I made it so that I can just immediately focus my uses. I think this is a much better route to go than having all those shortcuts in there, because changing the film simulation modes, I don't do that often. I don't change the white balance that often either. So, but the focus points I change all the time, continuously during my entire shoot. So this was more important for me. Then you've got focus assist here, which allows you to zoom in. You'll notice you can now see the honeycomb grid there on the screen. And then I can change the focus here on the front. If I just change it here to manual focus, I can now change the focus. Then you can see the focus change on that honeycomb grid as I turn this. So it just gives you a bigger view, the focus assist button. And it's nice to use the focus assist when you're looking through your electronic viewfinder, because then you can see in a lot of detail, are you getting the focus spot on, so you don't get any bloopers or maybe some back focusing or something like that. Okay, now let's look at the menu system, because the menu system is actually very user friendly. Lots of stuff that you can actually change here. You'll notice the first one that says in red is the shooting menu. It runs all the way to 5 there. And then the rest here is the setup, and you can like format your card and stuff like that there. So let's quickly go through all the menus to see what they've got on here. Okay, the first one is your bracketing and your advanced, what's that word again? The filter. So here you can bracket your normal exposure bracketing, your ISO bracketing. You can also even change the film simulations, which I will talk about soon. And you can tell the camera, shoot different film simulations for me, so I can have a few different JPEGs to choose from. It's really very user friendly. And the advanced layer effects, like I said, I don't really use that, so I'm not even going to look at that. Then you've got your autofocus settings, your ISO settings, your image quality. The camera has a 16 megapixel sensor. I'm not a pixel peeper, so I don't go into a picture and I need 40 megapixels, so I want to zoom into a pimple. I don't do that. I've printed wedding albums, A3, high gloss, handmade beautiful albums that was shot on a 12 megapixel camera. So people go into that megapixel war and they go crazy, and I want more megapixel, more megapixel. It's not always just the megapixel. It's the overall camera, the sensor, the size of the sensor, the quality of the sensor. There's so much that's important. It's not just the megapixels. So for me, 16 megapixel on this camera is perfectly fine. I'm not doing large format stuff where I need to print it as big as a building. Then I'll go get a 40, 50 megapixel camera and hire it for the day or something like that. Okay, image quality, you'll notice I've got it set to fine JPEG, that's your biggest one, and RAW as well. Now what I do here, I'll be showing some example pictures on the screen so you can see what I've been up to. This is just pictures that I took while I'm out enjoying the day. So this is not for clients, this is just for myself enjoying my photography. Then I'll actually most of the time be shooting in JPEG, because the pictures you're seeing now has got no Photoshop work done to them. This is all directly from the camera. So the JPEG files for me are really so good that I don't see the point in always Photoshopping it. But then I've also got here, like you can see there, RAW. So when I'm doing a shoot for a client, or it's maybe a wedding or something, And I'm running into situations where it's a red dress, black suit, terrible sunlight, and here in South Africa it's really very sunny and warm, and there's lots of light. And it's not always the easiest, and then you run into problems where you'll need some highlights and shadow recovery, and getting the white balance is perfect if it's a tricky location you're shooting at with lots of light falling on different colored objects. Then I would rather, instead of doing it on the day, I would rather want to sit in front of my PC, go into Lightroom and do a proper job there and know I'm giving the client the best. So then I'll rather use RAW. So sometimes I switch between the two. Now, so conclusion, if I'm doing something for myself, a lot of the times I'm shooting JPEG. If it's for a client, sometimes I use the JPEGs depending on what happened that day, and I'll use the RAWs if I find that this was a tricky one, I'm gonna need to do some work. And that brings me to another big no-no with the Fuji and your RAW files. The RAW support is terrible when you work on Lightroom. I'm just going to turn the screen back on here. It went to sleepy mode. When you try and work on your RAW files in Lightroom, you'll notice that the RAW files, they look terrible. The quality is really terrible of the RAW files. If you compare to what you're getting with the JPEGs that come straight off the camera, which really look awesome, the RAW files, when decoded, or encoded, decoded, one of those two. You need to excuse my English sometimes. It's second language. Okay, so it doesn't handle the files that nicely. So if you look on the screen grab, you can see in Lightroom you can choose the different film simulation modes in Lightroom, and that helps you to get a better RAW file. So if you're struggling with this, go look under your calibration and then just choose the right mode right there, and you'll see immediately it'll start to look better, but it's still not there. Adobe still needs to put some work in there, and why not Fuji just get involved and try and make it better, because the RAW files just isn't there yet. Okay, dynamic range, that says it all basically. You can change the dynamic range to make it more, so for better highlights and shadow recovery you can tell the camera to have a bigger dynamic range, and Fuji is well known for cameras that have a very good dynamic range. Okay, film simulation mode. This is awesome. This is really awesome. Now you'll notice there's a standard one right there, the standard Provia one. The Provia and the Velvia, those are the old film days when you used these very nice Fuji films to shoot your pictures on. So what they've done is they've made a simulation of what happened on those films. They've simulated it on the Fuji. So depending on what you're shooting, this is also what's awesome about the camera, is while I'm shooting, I change my film simulation mode to the type of scenario I'm in, and then I just use my JPEGs. I don't need to Photoshop it in the end because it just looks so good. The JPEGs that come off the camera for me are more than good enough. So you can see there what happens. Vibrant reproduction, ideal for landscapes and nature. Here's austere, softer color and contrast for a more subdued look. Classic chrome, this I've done some shots on this that came out beautifully. Soft color and enhanced shadow contrast for a calm look. Then you've got your your black and whites and your monochrome, sepia, all different film simulation modes in here. So I do use these quite often, but I've taken away the shortcut that allowed you to do it from here. I just go into the menu because I don't use it every day, but I'm shooting for myself. I tend to use this quite a lot. Okay, self timer, that's self-explanatory. Interval timer, I don't think I've used this yet. I think I've used it once, can't remember. I think it was a long time ago. White balance, I usually keep mine on auto because I'm shooting in RAW and I can just change it later on. In the studio, I tend to change, you can see the colors will change when I go to custom here. I've used a gray card or a color passport, and then I do a custom white balance when I'm shooting with my studio lights to make sure I get the best white balance from that. Okay, then we also have Kelvin, fine, shade, all the normal white balances you would expect. So that's very straightforward. If I'm shooting RAW, I just keep it on auto. I'll set the white balance in post. If I'm shooting JPEG and I'm not going to Photoshop it at all, I try to set the white balance, and I also do the following settings, like for instance color, sharpness, highlight tone, shadow tone, noise reduction. I set all these specifically on the day I'm shooting. Then I don't need Photoshop at all. It's like Photoshopping on the go. Okay, then we've got a ton of other settings here. I'm not going to go through everything because I've set up most of this myself to the way I want to shoot with the camera. You can see there's your movie setup. Your wireless communication is very important for you to set up your tablet or your phone to your camera. This one is very important, shutter type. If you have it set to a mechanical shutter, then the camera will, if you just bought your camera and you put a say 1.8 or 1.4 lens on it, and you've got it set to mechanical shutter, your mechanical shutter is limited. It can only go max to like 4,000ths of a second, if I remember correctly. It's basically the same as what's on top of the shutter speed dial here on top of the camera. So it won't be able to go faster. So if you are shooting in bright daylight and you've got a wide open aperture at like 1.8 or 1.4, there's going to be too much light. The shutter will be too slow. And you will find your shutter speed will not go faster than what your mechanical shutter can handle. So then you just go to shutter type and you turn it on to mechanical plus electronic shutter, and that'll allow you to go faster up to 32,000ths of a second, which is really awesome. Then also do not turn the quiet function on. So basically you've got a silent shutter, you don't hear anything at all. Then you'll find your flash won't work. So just remember, if you've got a speed light on here, if it's in quiet mode or silent mode, I'm not sure what it's called now, that won't work properly. So I've never turned mine on to complete silent. Okay, then when you reach the blue setup menu, this is all very self-explanatory, like date, time difference, language, screen setup, sound setup. Here you can do all your shortcuts, like the buttons and dials, where what must go, what function does that button have, basically. This one is very important, power management. I've set my my high performance, I've turned it to on. The reason for that is I want the best performance from the camera that I can get. I don't care about battery performance. That's why I bought 9 batteries. I just quickly change on the go. It's got a battery grip, it's quick to change the battery. And then I've even bought a USB charger, which I really haven't used that much, I must say, because I'd never run out of the batteries anyway during a shoot. But I've got one as a backup that if I ever run into a problem, I can use a power bank and actually charge my Fuji batteries via USB. So power management for me, very important. I've got that turned on. Then you've got your color space, your connection settings, your format, all the basic stuff that you would expect you find in your setup. So as you can see, the menus are really very self-explanatory, very easy to do all your settings. Everything is easy to find. I've never struggled to find a setting on the back of the camera. Okay, now let's discuss my solution so far on the Fuji to have proper flashes. So what I'm using is the Cactus V6 wireless transceivers. If you haven't seen what these guys can do, I've shot some awesome videos, like entire series of videos for these units. So go have a look at I've put it in the description. I've put all the links to these videos. Go have a look at them. But what's nice about this is if I have it on my camera like this, I just slip it here into the hot shoe, lock it in place, and there I go. Now the nice thing with this is it's got 4 groups at the top, A, B, C, D, and then I can control Nikon, Canon, all different types of flashes with one system. Now obviously it's not TTL, you're shooting in manual, but that's exactly what I want. So what I do is I've got this one on the camera and I set this unit to TX, to transmit. Then I've got 2 or 3 of these stands that I always usually take with me when I'm doing shoots, and they're nice and light, so I've got it in the bag and I just carry them with me. And then I put one of these other units I put on top of this, so this just goes in place here, and then I just take my SB910, this goes in place here. And then I turn the flash on and I turn the Cactus V6 to RX and I choose the profile and I say, okay, sync to this SB910. If you've got a flash that isn't on this profile, you just tell the thing learning mode, learn this flash, and you create a profile for it. It's really cool. I've used flashes on this thing that I actually got more from the flash, more power levels than the flash was that the flash actually came out with. So this thing completely reprogrammed that flash. It's awesome. So I love these units. So I'll have this, say for instance, if you look at this sample picture, you'll see I'm sitting on the ground and I'm taking a picture at Blueberg Strand here in Cape Town with table mount in the back. I'm doing a family shoot. It's a very big family, and it was a fun shoot, and the weather was beautiful. And there I'm sitting on my bottom with the SB910, I think, behind me. So that was my flash for that shot. So what I did was I take my camera and I set the manual settings to get the ambient light right. Now, what's nice about this camera is with that electronic viewfinder that's got that beautiful screen in there, I've got a perfect view to see exactly what I'll be getting with the ambient light. So I look through there and I do my shutter and my aperture and my ISO and everything, and I set my colors because this thing has got all those film simulation modes and everything. I set up my camera perfectly for what I want to see with the ambient light. Then I turn my flashes on, I do a test shot. Then I look at my picture again, and now the nice thing is, even if I'm outside with that very strong sunny weather at the ocean, if I look through here, it's like a little dark room. So I can see in here what my picture is going to look like. So I can see, is this flash power strong enough or isn't it strong enough? So I can go bright or darker. I don't even need to touch the flash because I've got the power level right at the back. And because you've got groups, I can say, okay, here's group A, there's group B, behind the people are group C. I don't need to walk around. I can just be sitting there and changing the power levels here, and I can immediately see what my shot looks like. So this has been my lifesaver so far with flashes in mind, and it works great. I carry this with me if I'm doing corporate shoots and everything. I take it with me. Sometimes I'll take these studio lights. I've got two different sets of them. So I'll take the studio lights along. If it's a very long shoot where I want consistent power, then I'll use this with those lights, or I will use, here's the Cactus V4s. They also work great. I've got a bunch of these as well. But you can't set power levels with them, which is perfectly fine because I set the power levels behind these lights. But what's nice about the system, in one of those cases, I've got brackets that fit onto the stand. So I fit the bracket on here, it's got like a loop. And then if you look at this behind here, if you look at this mount, it's got basically like a circle, and this clips in there. And then my flash just goes in there. So the nice thing is all this stuff you can see here behind me, the strip softbox, this beauty dish, the barn doors of the gels, everything that I've got here, I can fit onto this. So if I'm traveling and I want to work very light, don't need to worry about cables because I need power for that. I need electricity to power that thing. With this, I've got batteries in here, I've got batteries in here. So I won't necessarily use this outdoors. It chowers a lot of power and the wind usually will blow it over. But if I'm indoors, I'll use those. Sometimes I use umbrellas as well, like the shoot-through umbrellas or reflective umbrellas. Like for instance, if you take a look at the following shots, this was taken, it's a corporate shot for an attorney that I did, and I'm shooting at f1.4, or that I think was f1.8, those specific shots, but there are a few in there that I did for him that was at f1.4, very shallow depth of field. And I can control these speed lights. I put them into the room and I just turn the power levels here at the top of the Cactus V6. Works like a dream. So I've got lots of modifiers and stuff that I can put on the flashes. I can shape the light. I can make it into anything that I want to by just using this Cactus system to control the flashes. So that's been my savior with flash in mind because of this. Let's rather not talk about the EVF. It's going to make me depressive and all that. So this is my solution to flash. I can see the ambient light in the camera on the electronic viewfinder, and when the flash fires, I press the preview button, I see my shot with the flash in there, and I can immediately say, am I getting it right? Am I not getting it right? If there's anything wrong, I just fix my settings, do another shot, look at it. So basically most of the time I nail the shot the first time, or maybe the second or the third shot I've got it perfect if something's not working, like maybe the flash is not strong enough or something like that. But it's really very quick and it works like a dream. Okay, now after a very long video, I need to come to a conclusion about what I think about the Fuji X-T1. I think it's a lovely camera. It's pricey, but it delivers. It's very fun. It changed the way that I take pictures when I'm going out to shoot pictures for myself, not for clients. The reason for that is when I'm shooting every day and doing stuff for people, when you need to go out to take pictures for yourself, you sometimes become a little bit tired, like, I've had enough, I'm going to do something else now. When I bought this camera and I had the electronic viewfinder and I could see everything happen, and I had the ability of the Wi-Fi, and just the way this camera feels in my hand, the way all the settings work, it immediately almost reignited my passion for photography. I wanted to go out and I wanted to go take pictures. So that's something personal that I felt when I bought the camera. It has problems, the flash, the support with Lightroom, but when I'm going out and shooting for myself, I'm shooting it right on the camera. I can see it happen in there. I get my settings right, I shoot it right, and then I don't even Photoshop at all. The pictures just look that good. The JPEG files on this camera are really awesome. So for the working side as a professional, then I'll sometimes use the JPEGs if I get it right and the dynamic range isn't that big that I can actually use it straight from the camera, I will. If I still need to work on those pictures, it takes a little bit of extra work in Lightroom. I'm hoping they will get it right, because yeah, the files, the handling of the raw files just isn't that good. It helps if you know how to edit the files, but it's not as good as the previous, like for instance my Fuji S5 Pro, the SLR camera that Fuji released years ago. When they finally got those raw files to work properly in Lightroom, they worked like a dream. So I'm still waiting for them to make that look really good. But build quality, the weight of this camera, carrying a bag with me and having 2 camera bodies in there, 3 lenses, 2 flashes, a tablet, cell phone, battery bank, maybe a snack or 2, and carrying a bag on my back, and it's like, oh, this feels so great. Compared to carrying my Nikon bag and going with all my lenses with me, and it weighs a ton. So for me, it's a fun camera. Even if I'm working or if I'm just going out for a shoot, it's a fun camera to work with. It delivers, it's fast, it focuses brilliantly. I haven't mentioned this in the video, I think. One of the deal breakers when I got this, with my Nikon SLR camera, if I was focusing, a lot of the times the camera said, hey, I'm focused, take your shot. Take the picture, and it back focused, or it front focused, but in my case, it was mostly back focusing. So no matter how perfect I get the focus, it wasn't always right. A lot of the times the focus just jumped a bit. Now you go into the adjustments and you align the camera. I forgot what the word is now in the Nikon system. And you go into the camera settings and you adjust that. You're trying to make it as perfect as possible. Now the moment I start to shoot at 2.8 or 1.8, sometimes that starts to show, and then the focus just isn't perfect. Now with this camera, the focus, because the camera focuses differently than what the SLR camera does, the focusing was just blisteringly fast and most of the time correct. After using it now for a while, I still got shots where sometimes the camera focuses behind the person or something like that. But then I've got settings here to adjust the way, the size of the block that the camera focuses with, and then I usually fix it quickly. But other than that, the focusing is more spot on. I've got, I would say, less bloopers with this compared to my Nikon system. So I love the focusing, I love the lenses, the image quality, the sharpness. Oh, I love this camera and I could recommend it to anyone. The moment Fuji releases that flash, then I'll definitely recommend it to everyone. But yeah, other than that, I think it's a great camera. Fuji really listened to what people wanted and released something that I think is great, awesome, nice to work with, very fun camera. So yeah, I think that's the end of my video. And then if you've enjoyed it, you know what to do, subscribe. And then also go have a look at my show called Digital Photography Today. It's not really recorded a lot on this camera. It's mostly on bridge cameras and a Nikon SLR camera, where I show people how to use the camera properly. So go have a look at the show. The link is in the description, and you can follow me there and learn a lot about your camera if you're at the point where you don't necessarily know how to use your camera properly, be it this camera you might buy or something else. So hopefully I'll see you again, and then I'll see you as a subscriber soon. So bye.